Well, hi, everyone, and welcome on into another edition of the Campaign Catch-Up. After a week off, we are back, and we're going to be talking about the latest going on here in Washington, D.C. as we get ready for a new Congress, getting ready to start on Friday. Joining me to talk about a couple of different things as this new Congress gets underway, CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody and host of the Quick Start podcast for CBN, Dan Andros. Gentlemen, get your engines going. First of all, Happy New Year to both of you guys. I hope it's been a wonderful one now that we are, 48 hours into it.
Happy New Year to you as well, John.
Happy New Year, John.
Well, it is a new year, which means a new Congress. We're recording this on Thursday, which means tomorrow the House and the Senate will both be in session. The new House and the new Senate will both be in session with Republicans in control of both chambers of Congress. Right now, the big story is whether or not Speaker of the House Mike Johnson will be able to hold on to his gavel. We're having another speakership battle, it seems like, at least in the media right now. Some conservative members of the House Republican caucus are considering whether or not to refuse to back Speaker Johnson. President-elect Trump is urging Republicans to back the speaker and for him to hold on to the gavel. But with such a slim majority in the House right now, and all Democrats saying that they will be there on Friday to participate in the vote, David, Speaker Johnson can't lose one single more Republican member of Congress. Congressman Thomas Massie has already said he's a no, which means Speaker Johnson has to have every other Republican on board. What are you hearing right now about his chances of retaining the speakership?
That is correct, John, by the way. The sense is that he's going to win the speakership. It may not happen on the first ballot. This may take a couple of ballots, but ultimately he probably will prevail. Having said that, I have absolutely no clue, and no one in Washington has any clue, because that's the truth. But you're right. Look, he can only afford one defection, and that's going to be Thomas Massie. There's no doubt about it. He's a no. So now you're on to Chip Roy. Everybody's going to be looking. He's an R, so we'll wait for the roll call, A through Z, but he's an R on that one. Chip Roy isn't a firm no, but you get a sense that he's leaning no, but there's that. And then you have others, obviously, like Andy Harris, the head of the Freedom Caucus, Tim Burchett, who should be a yes on Johnson, and a few others. But here's what's in Johnson's favor at this point. No one else can get to 218. No one else can. I mean, Jim Jordan can't, Tom Emmer can't, Scalise can't. Scalise and Emmer have tried before, or Scalise has tried before. So that works in Johnson's favor because, you know, I guarantee you right now, what I know from the Freedom Caucus folks, as I talk to them at times, they're trying to find someone that can get to 218, and they know darn well that no one can. And so because of that, you get a sense that Johnson will be the speaker. Now, a couple interesting things to watch for. Chip Roy may cash a chip, if you will, in all of this, because he'd love to be the head of the Rules Committee. So maybe, possibly, watch for this as a backroom deal. Chip Roy says, you know what, Speaker Johnson, I can torpedo you with this second no vote, but I'll say yes if you make me head of the Rules Committee. And of course, why is it important to be head of the Rules Committee? Because that, in essence, here we go, right, sets the rules for debate and for what gets brought up and what doesn't under certain rules in the House, which is very important in terms of how legislation is maneuvered through the House and what actually can get passed and what can't. So that could be a possibility if Roy is a stumbling block, but that's where it is right now, John.
And Dan, before I get to you, I want to throw one more David's way because I want to get a sense of why it is we're in this position again. What is it that some of these conservative members that you were just mentioning, the Chip Roys of the world, I know Victoria Sparks has said she needs to hear more. What is it some of these conservative Republicans have against Mike Johnson that they would prevent him from being speaker?
He didn't keep his word. It's just that simple. You know, he promised 12 appropriations bills that never got done. He was against Ukraine funding, then he was for it. And so you just go down the list. There's other things too. He's cutting deals with Democrats left and right. He said that you would have 72 hours to read the bill, and there have been times where there's not been 72 hours to read the bill. So, and there's a list of other things too. But overall, they don't like the fact that he's making deals and in essence not cutting the spending that he said he promised to do. But I think the big one is the 12 appropriations bills. He said he was going to do it, and he didn't do it. And really, he should never have promised it, because it's very hard to do that in a divided caucus. Forget the Democrats for a second, but you don't. This just in, the whole Republican caucus is not the House Freedom Caucus. You've got rhinos and you got folks that want to spend a lot of money in the Republican Party. This is not a Democrat problem. It's a bipartisan problem. And so because of that, Johnson had to make some deals here. And when he did, that kind of sunk some of the trust among House Freedom Caucus members.
Dan, coming to you, I mean, I mentioned at the top that President-elect Trump is urging for Republicans to back Speaker Johnson, and the scuttlebutt is that President-elect Trump likes Mike Johnson. He's called him a nice guy, thinks he's a nice guy. But President Trump has never backed someone just because they were a nice person. There's something in it for the president-elect, and we're playing politics here. This isn't nice guys finish first or whatever. So with President-elect Trump, what do you think the motivation is behind wanting Speaker Johnson to keep? Would it just simply be to avoid chaos like we saw last year when House Republicans went through day after day, vote after vote for Trump to just have a clean start to his administration?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you think about it here, history will show that. I mean, there's a strong chance when you have a majority control like this, like the Republicans have right now, like when the Democrats had it a few years ago under Obama, that you only have this short window. So it's a high likelihood that this thing could, the control of Congress could flip around in 2 years. So you've only got a short window here to be able to have full control and push through things that you want to push through with far more ease than you would obviously in a Democrat-controlled Congress. So I think it really is helpful for Trump if he can just sail this through and then get everybody on a unified front and start trying to push for the things that they want to push through. And also too, there's no, as David kind of mentioned, there's no real strong alternative here who's an obvious choice who you could just push through and say, well, this is the guy here that's going to be able to get it done and unify everyone. So then what are you left with now? If you throw a grenade into the mix there and then you just shake it all up, and then what? And then you got, like you said, votes over votes over votes, and then somebody doesn't get in, they don't make it. So yeah, I think it definitely benefits Trump here to keep this thing smooth, keep the trains rolling on time here, and then head into this first window here that could potentially be a narrow window where they have a chance to push through some Republican agenda items.
Yeah, I know Republican Senator Rand Paul had said, reminding people, it doesn't have to be a member of Congress to be Speaker of the House. It can be somebody who's not even in Congress whatsoever. But that's, I think, kind of saying that in jest or in a flight of fancy in his imagination somewhere. It certainly is going to be somebody who's a Republican serving in the House of Representatives. But Dan, one more for you here, because this is interesting in that you could see some of these conservative members of Congress, like Chip Roy, who in the first few days here of this new Congress and going back to last week during this fight to keep the government open, was openly sparring with Donald Trump. And Thomas Massey on X put out a statement essentially saying, listen, I love Donald Trump, but I have to do what's right for my constituents. Do you think that the Trump not the Trump campaign, but the new Trump White House, the new Trump administration, are they taking some hits here to their ability to lead if they do have some Republicans peel off here?
That's a good question. And I will say I have noticed that there seems to be a little bit more of a willingness this time around from some Republicans to openly criticize Trump. I think you saw at times, like it kind of in the past had been sort of this one or the other. You're either like this never Trumper or you're just all on board MAGA, right? You didn't get a lot of that in the middle where, well, I'm supporting Trump, but I'm going to hit out on him on this, And so, we are seeing a little bit more of that. But I think people will fall in line. I mean, I think, like you said, David, you were talking about people are kind of jostling behind the scenes for different roles and things like that. I would suspect that's more of what you're seeing here. And then once the dust settles on that, I think you'll see a little bit more of a unified front.
A couple quick notes on that, John, too. First of all, let's remember, this is the first vote of Congress for this new year, and a Congress can't start their work until that's done. So why is that important? Well, here's one reason. Congress won't get paid. these members won't get paid until they actually elect a speaker. So that might get them moving a little bit. Number one. Also, remember, you can't certify the election on January 6th until Congress is seated. So that's another reason to get this moving. And as for Donald Trump, look, yeah, he likes Mike Johnson, and John, you're absolutely right. He doesn't do anything just because he likes someone, though he's very loyal. He's to a fault. That Trump's problem is he's loyal to a fault. But I will say this: if someone came to Trump and said, "Hey, Donald, we've got a guy here in the House that can get 218, 100%. You're all set," he'd go with him. He'd go with him. You know, for Trump, this is about victory, and we're going to make sure you got to get the victory. He thinks that Johnson is the best person that can get anywhere close to victory at this point, as opposed to anybody else. But he wouldn't have a problem at all endorsing someone else if he thought that person can get to 218, but no one else can.
So, David, let's say the speakership thing gets wrapped up pretty quickly, and I don't think there's anybody on that Republican side that wants this thing to drag on like it did last year. So let's say this thing gets wrapped up, you certify the election, come Monday, you start your normal congressional work week. You know, you're going to start with hearings soon. You're going to start with, you know, speeches on the floor and all that kind of stuff. What are the main areas that you think Republicans are going to want to implement first? What are some of the main vehicles of legislation that they're going to really target out of the gate? Because as we all know, the first 100 days of a president's administration is the most effective when you can get the most done. It's probably largely the same for Congress too. Getting out of the gate quickly, getting your most important priorities done quickly is kind of the name of the game. What is most important to this Congress?
Well, it's trifecta. It's a trifecta, and it'll be exactly what Donald Trump wants to do, which is, and you can take it in any order you want, but immigration, energy policy, and extending the Trump tax cuts. So those are the three big ones. Put them in any order you want, but you know, the old walk and chew gum at the same time. They'll do all three of them at the same time. So you'll see bills drop on certain elements of that. Now, of course, January 20th will come along, and then Trump will do a lot of executive orders. And then, of course, the legislative part of that will come into fruition. And then all of a sudden we'll have an executive branch and a legislative branch, or at least a Republican part of the legislative branch, working together on those items. So that's what I think you'll see by and large. But I do think that between January 6th and January 20th, especially, you'll probably see at least one, maybe two hearings on some of these nominees. I mean, Pete Hegseth's nomination is scheduled, or the hearing is scheduled for January 14th. That's before Trump takes office. You may get another one. You might get Tulsi Gabbard or somebody else, but definitely Hegseth. So I think those are some things that are going to be prevalent and important for Republicans. And let's remember, because of what happened in New Orleans, or what is happening in New Orleans, and what's happened outside Trump Hotel in Vegas, I think this idea of getting Hegseth and Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard and others confirmed faster or sooner rather than later, I think will be important for this administration, and something you'll hear Congress talk about a lot.
Well, one other aspect of MAGA world right now, as we get ready again for a new Congress to start on Friday, is there seems to be a growing rift also with regard to something called an H1B visa. For those of you who are not following, there's kind of a battle going on between the camp of Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, the guys who are going to head the Doge committee, and MAGA stalwarts, Steve Bannon and Laura Loomer, and this has to do with a temporary non-immigrant work permit that allows people from outside the country to come in, specialized workers to come in, and specifically in the tech field. Musk reportedly told a former H1B recipient on his social platform X, "I will go to war on this issue, the likes of which you cannot possibly comprehend." And the idea here is Steve Bannon essentially said the whole program is a scam run by Silicon Valley oligarchs. So Dan, you have this kind of growing war here between two factions of MAGA. One, the Silicon Valley folks like Ramaswamy, like Elon Musk, who want to keep the H-1B visa program rolling because they say it brings in talent from outside the country that they really need. And then you have folks like Steve Bannon, Laura Loomer, and others who are worried that this is going to hurt American workers. What's your take on kind of this growing battle inside MAGA? Again, another rift as we're seeing here.
Yeah, this is interesting. And I think maybe there's just going to be more defining that needs to be done on what it means to be America first, right? Because I don't think it's an all or nothing proposition here where you can't have immigrants coming in who come in the right way and want to work and come in through rules that maybe get us good workers and get beneficial workers, as Trump and others were, and Musk were saying. But so I think maybe we're going to see a little bit more of a discussion here on just exactly the details on America First and what that means, and where maybe there's some areas where, something that might seem conflicting, like maybe how that can work out, and fleshing that out a little bit, because I think it's a little too vague and maybe sophomoric to just assume that when you say America First, then we just throw everything else out. And there's, that doesn't mean there's no one else, or that no American workers get a job when you have something like this. So maybe, I'm interested to see David's reaction to this, but my thought on it when I saw it was that that maybe there needs to be some more sort of in-depth conversations on what it means to be America First.
I mean, Dan, that's really some real astute analysis, and I'm glad you said this whole defining America First, because that's exactly how I see it. Let me give you an example. You've got Elon Musk. I'll take Vivek Ramaswamy out of it for a moment, but let's just take Elon Musk. Okay, Elon Musk is air quote, right? America First. Steve Bannon is America First. They're both MAGA. But what kind of MAGA are they exactly? Elon Musk is more of an economic MAGA. He's more of a, financial MAGA, in the sense that, good business and prosperity leads to jobs, leads to a better America, leads to a stronger America. It's all through an economic lens, all through a business lens. Bannon, on the other hand, is more about the lunch bucket, hard scrabble American worker somewhere in, the Rust Belt somewhere. That is not Elon Musk's MAGA. I'm not saying he doesn't care about those folks, and I'm not saying Bannon doesn't care about the economic success of the country. They both do, but the priorities are different, and that's what we're seeing here. The priority for Musk is more about, look, we need these H1B visa workers over here from a foreign perspective, because that's going to make companies better. Therefore, it's going to be a better America. And therefore, you get to America First. Whereas Bannon is saying, well, wait a minute. What about the forgotten man, right? We always hear about the forgotten man. What about that American worker that's being shoved to the side? So that's the lunch bucket portion of MAGA, which honestly is more of the core MAGA. So Bannon is in tune with more of the core MAGA. Elon Musk, I've never believed has been MAGA. He even calls himself dark MAGA, right? He doesn't even call himself like MAGA. And there's a reason for that, right? I mean, well, partly it's because he's a little strange. Let's be honest. He is. I mean, he'd be the first one to admit he's a little strange in a good, I guess, in a good way, in the sense that he's really smart, though he believes in transhumanism, which is a whole nother issue, which I think we'll have to have a discussion about. But anyhow, the point is that when you put the two against each other, then you're right, Dan. You come back to, what is America First exactly? Both can make the argument that it is, but I got to tell you, the pulse of MAGA is with Bannon. The pulse of MAGA is not with Elon Musk. As a matter of fact, with Elon Musk, and I've said this for a while, guys, here and other places on 700 Club as well. I never really trusted Elon Musk as far as I can throw him. I think Elon Musk is about Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk needs to understand he needs to stay in his lane, and his lane is Doge. If we're talking H1B visas, that's Tom Homan, that's Trump, that's immigration. He's not in his lane here. Now, you can make the argument that, well, H1B visas is the economy, relates to immigration. It relates to Doge because, there's going to be wasteful spending in there somehow, some way. You can make that kind of esoterical, larger argument. But quite frankly, he's not in his lane here. And that's the problem. And that's the problem for Musk. So if you got to say, if the old tie goes to the runner in baseball, the tie goes to Bannon here. I mean, Bannon is the pulse of the movement more than Elon Musk is.
Yeah. I just want to say, I want to add to that real quick, John. Elon, it's interesting because he bought, X, and it ended up being hailed as this move that like saved free speech. And in a way, I suppose it did, compared to sort of the people who were running it before that, were gatekeepers on all these different things. But it gives him such a platform to really push his agenda on things. And to David's point about not trusting him, it'll be interesting to see how far he pushes on certain issues where he is clearly not in the mainstream with Republican line of thought, like on the climate issue. I mean, this is a guy who made Tesla because he, is a big proponent of climate change and is kind of on board with a lot of those ideas that a lot of Republicans just, would, I would think even President Trump called it a hoax at one point. So those are very differing views here. And to David's point about staying in the lane, like the more he goes out of that in his least capacity as kind of advising Trump, I mean, that will be interesting to see how far he pushes on some of those issues.
Also, let's remember, I mean, Elon Musk could burn out very quickly, could be a potential SpaceX rocket. It could be a burnout big time because MAGA is not happy with not just Elon Musk staying in his lane, but his verbiage on X. I mean, he has been, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but it's something like, I'll take this battle all the way to the end of the earth or something like that, scorched earth or something like, I forgot what it was, but it was something like where, you don't want to mess with me because this is a battle I'm willing to die for, something along those lines. It's like, whoa. I'm telling you right now, I'm talking to people in MAGA every single day. They were not happy with that line. Kind of like, okay, calm your jets. Calm your jets, Elon. Literally, I guess, in a way, calm your jets. Yeah. So anyhow, that's just part of it. I think the solution here, by the way, if you're wondering where I think this is going, I think ultimately they're going to reform the H1B visa program. I think that's the middle ground. Right now, you have a cap at 65,000. We know it's not 65,000. It's really like 85,000. And then let's be honest, it's not even 85,000. It's into the hundreds of thousands. So you've got to cap it and figure out a way to not have an American worker be displaced in the process. And I think, and there's a bill by Ro Khanna, a Democrat, and Paul Gosar, a very conservative Republican, that was dropped in the hopper last Congress. It'll be dropped again in this one. That might be a middle ground, how you reform the H-1B visa program. I think that's the way it's going.
And I thought it was interesting something Laura Loomer said in response to Musk's growing power within the Trump administration, the incoming Trump administration, now saying simply, I think we need to talk about campaign finance reform, which is an unusual thing to hear from Republicans, certainly. But she's a little bit weary now of somebody like Elon Musk, the richest person in the world, able to dump so much money into a single campaign and wield so much influence simply because they are the wealthiest person in the world. We'll see if that continues. That line of discussion continues as this battle between the Musks and the like you said, the blue collar MAGA of the world, if they continue here as this next Trump administration gets rolling along. But that's what we're waiting for. We're waiting for the next Trump administration to begin. Inauguration Day is just a couple weeks away, and we've got a new Congress coming on Friday. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. Let's see whether or not Speaker Johnson is able to hold on to his gavel, and we'll be keeping track of everything going on inside MAGA world and Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C., all that. Dan Andros, David Brody, thank you for joining me once again.
All right, thanks, John.